because and the other point is that the only distinction between, like, the sugar molecules are the same between and this is what it's even more astonishing. You look at it on the surface and you go, well, these things break down to sugar. These plants break down to sugar. And also this Twinkie breaks down to the same sugar. So why are people saying it's different? That's already astonishing that people are trying to draw a difference there. But then you think about it even deeper and you go, the sugar in the Twinkie came from those plants. Like it's even more obvious, because where did that sugar come from when they made it? It came from plants. So it's even more obvious. Like, it's not just like processed sugar. We got it from this different source. So sugar comes from a different source. It's like, no, it doesn't. It all traces right back to the plant, the thing on the right that you're trying to compare the Twinkie to. It's like, no, it still does come from that. Like, it comes from the plant. So the only major difference of any practical concern is the rate at which it hits your bloodstream. Like, that's it. But it doesn't mean that if it hits slower that you've reduced all harm. You've reduced some of it, but why don't you just cut it out completely?
Exactly.
Usually...
Makes no sense whatsoever.
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Carnivore Evolution. Today, our special guest is Edward Goeke, who's really carved a niche for himself in the carnivore community. Our co-host is Mark Ennis, and we would like to welcome Ed to our show. Hello, and welcome, Edward Goeke.
Hello, Victoria. Hello, Mark. Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you
Thanks
too,
for
Edward.
joining us. Yes, Edward. We'd like to hear from you about all the endeavors you have to promote the concepts behind the carnivore diet. And I'd like to start out with your personal story of how you came to this way of eating and discovered the evidence that you have presented for us.
Yeah. So it's well, my story starts whenever I was 16 years old. If I told the whole thing, we would fill up the whole interview. So I'll be as brief as possible. But at 16, I developed symptoms of a very mysterious condition. We knew it was a condition right from the get-go because I had never experienced any symptoms that came on that quickly and were that severe. So these symptoms included things like random panic attacks that were sort of physiologically caused, not mentally caused. They would just randomly happen. I wasn't thinking about anything. Heart rate would just go up, butterflies in my stomach would occur, and I just felt unstable physically, which is going to become very key in just a bit whenever the answer becomes clear as to what it was. But also blood pressure swings whenever I would stand up. So this would be very high blood pressure, very high heart rate whenever I would stand up. And the heart rate especially would actually persist. It'd be 135 BPM standing, wouldn't go down from there. It was many, I mean, dozens and dozens of symptoms. But one of the most prominent ones that I talk about, and because it's the most debilitating, was the extreme pain that I would experience whenever I would experience any emotion, whether it be positive or negative, or whether it be subtle or severe. A very, very, very weird symptom. And anytime that I would tell a doctor that, you can imagine that we give them a lot of flack for saying that everything is anxiety, right? But this is probably the one instance where if they hear someone saying, well, every time I experience emotion, I feel extreme pain and my heart rate goes up, they might think, well, okay, that sounds like anxiety. And so I was in a really tough spot because that really does sound like anxiety or some mental disorder when I knew that it wasn't. And so we went to multiple hospitals. We made multiple hospital trips once it got worse and worse to the point where I couldn't really go to school anymore, couldn't really walk without being out of breath and being in excruciating pain. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't watch movies because it would evoke emotion from me, and I couldn't do that. I mean, I could barely get away with listening to music, like just the lightest amount. You overlook how much emotion you feel during just casual conversation with a friend until you are experiencing pain every time that you're talking with them. And so eventually what ended up happening was it became so debilitating to the point where my friends, even some members of my family that had heard about it, my immediate family, were saying, this has to be anxiety. Like we got to get over. You just got to get over this. Basically, I was on drugs at that point, propranolol, for blood pressure and heart rate regulation. I was on, um, I was on acid reflux drugs as well because they thought maybe since I believe I'm having a heart problem now because my heart's beating out of my chest and I can't control it, that it's acid reflux or something. Um, and so that was after a few hospital trips. They prescribed me with those. I was even on topical TRT because my
Really?
yeah, at 16, because my
Mhm.
dad had been diagnosed years prior with really low testosterone. There was a point where we thought he thought there was a gas leak in the house because every time that he would come home, he'd be so tired he would fall asleep on the couch after sitting down after work. He would just fall asleep. It's like he just passed out. And he had many other problems as well. Paradoxically, he had extreme anger issues over nothing, and they resolved once he got on injectable TRT. Pretty interesting stuff. And so we thought, well, maybe it's a testosterone related thing, high heart rate, fatigued all the time, mood dysregulation. And oddly enough, that helped for probably the first day. And then it didn't really do it. And very subtly it helped. I mean, the bar was pretty low at that point. Um, and so I probably because I mean, given the way that we eat nowadays, I probably was suffering from a little low testosterone, but it really was a secondary issue or a tertiary issue. It really didn't solve anything. So I was still taking all of this stuff, thinking, this is what I need to be doing. I started focusing on diet because I started losing hope. No one was giving me the answers that I wanted or needed. I wasn't getting any answers at all. And so I started focusing on diet. I was taught from the time I was growing up, like, okay, well, yeah, you got to eat healthy, and it can help with basically anything that you're dealing with, immune system function. It can help with prolonging your life, prolonging your health generally. And so I said, well, that's really the only thing that seems to be in my control. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and eat healthy. And of course, eating healthy at that time meant granola with almond milk and fruit smoothies.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, yeah. And so just really not great stuff. It was bland. So it wasn't even like I was enjoying myself even during that. Um, and so it sucked, but I stuck to it. I can't remember all the things I was eating because I went through about 6 dietary shifts, but that was sort of the start. I just remember sitting on the couch drinking fruit smoothies, trying to maximize how many fruits I could put in the smoothie, thinking that's what I should be
oh.
doing. Um,
Yes.
and so that didn't work. What do you know? That didn't work. I'm sure that doesn't need to be said, but eventually things just got worse and worse and worse. I wasn't going to school at that point, and my stepdad and I now have a really good relationship. But at the time, I was sort of looked at as, especially because during that age, I wasn't really responsible anyway, which is not my case. But since people were starting to think it was a mood disorder, including him, they thought, okay, well, during COVID, actually, during the lockdowns, I still hadn't gotten my first job yet, and they said, well, you need to get a job now. And I said, now? It's like the worst time to get a job. He goes, no, I know that, but you didn't get a job this whole time we've been telling you to, and now you need to go ahead and do that because he was looking at everything as me trying to use things as a scapegoat to get out of things. So ironically, I got my first job within that period at Walmart. And doesn't sound like it would be a lot of physical labor, but I got into a position that required quite a bit, and especially my condition, it was a big problem. But I also wanted to do that because I constantly wanted to prove to other people that I wasn't that type of person. And so I was actually I started forcing myself to go to school more, started forcing myself to not miss any shift at work, running myself into the dirt because I said, well, I don't want to be looked at like I'm lazy. If people are going to look at me like I'm an indolent child, then I'm going to start proving that I'm not, even in the worst of conditions. So I worked there for a year, still trying to figure out what was going on with me, was trying to eat healthy. This included at the time having some wheat tortilla wraps with turkey and cheese, and I was even filling it with raw vegetables, like raw green beans and peas, which don't even go together. But I was just maximizing everything. And I was actually chronically under eating too. Do you put that together? It was just a nightmare. So then I finally discovered, as I keep trying to find answers, I'm following all these alternative health pages on Instagram and scrolling and trying to find answers. I find a I find paleo was the first thing that I discovered. Paleo. Now that's a broad term. It means totally different things depending on who you talk to. But my variation of it was basically no grains. It was no grains, and it was using the natural sugars instead of the processed sugar. So maple syrup on paleo pancakes and all that stuff. So I don't even know if you could say that's a step in the right direction. It's just like you've chosen another bad tool. Like it's not great. Um, then I discovered Whole30 after that because I still wasn't seeing my symptoms go away. That was better. That involved cutting out legumes. That involved cutting out dairy. That involved cutting out, that involved more benefit. And then I discovered the lectin-free diet, like the Dr. Stephen Gundry style diet. And I stuck to that one quite a bit. And the reason for that was because the philosophy was actually so revolutionary for my brain. It was such a paradigm shift in my brain. I read his first book, The Plant Paradox, where he actually discusses plants have toxins in them. So ironically, my first introduction to this was Stephen Gundry. And this is actually a very important message for people. When someone causes a huge paradigm shift that is based on truth, sometimes if their conclusion is still wrong, that can be more damaging to you because it's so like you're like, no, 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 that has to be right though, because that's true. That's based on a really, really formidable premise. And it's one of the reasons I stuck to it for so long because I learned about lectins, the plant toxin, and I learned, okay, well, I should cut out all these foods that have lectins in them. But as a result of that, I actually went more plant-based because Dr. Gundry also promotes the idea that animal protein ages you. Animal protein is not something to be consumed in high amounts because it will cause higher insulin, higher mTOR activation, higher growth hormone activation, and then ultimately it's going to shorten your lifespan. It's going to shorten your health span. You can gain muscle. There's plenty of protein in avocado. I mean, seriously, these are claims from Dr. Gundry,
And
which is
oxalates, yeah.
yeah, yes. I mean, it's astonishing how someone can have their entire philosophical health model be based on such a, a significant truth, and then have everything around it be completely wrong. And it's impressive, but nevertheless, it made it more convincing for me because of how much the main philosophy made sense. So I was eating tons of Brussels sprouts and sweet potatoes and dark chocolate and avocado and
Yes.
onion and
Oh.
even cassava root at one point. Cassava.
Where
Um,
do you find that?
Cassava's in Florida. Yeah, I couldn't find it where I lived natively. Yeah, it was whenever I was actually starting to. Yeah, it was later in the story whenever I started doing that. But still, I almond flour and coconut flour and all those polyphenol complexes. I mean, basically everything. I was to
Must have
the.
cost you a fortune, Eddie, did it? It
What was that?
must have cost you a fortune like buying all this, did it?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Fortunately, I was 16, so I had no other responsibilities. I could spend all my income on the food. Yeah, that's basically what I did.
Yeah.
The the cauliflower and the broccoli, the Brussels sprouts, it was all over the carrots. So I was having that was the predominant base of my diet. I would have regenerative sort of 85-15 grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. I would have pastured eggs because Dr. Gundry does promote the idea of consuming those forms of them, but I would have hardly any of it. I mean, he'd promote a quarter pound of beef a day, no more than 4 eggs a day. Cut out the whites, only have the egg yolks. And so even
Yeah.
then, I'm not getting protein. I'm not getting
Yeah.
hardly any protein at all.
Yeah.
And so then what happened is in January of 2022, it was January 9th. I remember the day. I remember the day because I was walking downstairs to use the bathroom and I turned my head and my entire vision went black for a whole second. It was like the lights just went out. And again, at this point, I still have no idea what the hell is going on. I have no clue. This isn't immunological. This isn't. I've ruled out a bunch of things, but I haven't found the answer, which is more frustrating. Um, so it caused immense amounts of pain because that made my heart drop. Then your sight goes out, and so that caused pain because that's an emotion. And so then I hit the ground, and I hit the ground. I ended up in the bathroom, but like I hit the ground, and then closed the door. And I went on leave for work and I said, I don't know what's going on, but I need some time to recover. And I thought that I was like, give me 2 weeks. I'll be back on my feet. No, what happened was the little bit of muscle mass that was keeping me going on my extremely protein destitute diet completely went away to the point where any stability that it was granting me, it went away. I couldn't. And now I actually had to crawl to the bathroom. I couldn't even walk for short periods of time to go to the bathroom or cook my food. I was staying at my dad's house and I couldn't go outside. I couldn't see friends. I couldn't see family. I really couldn't. I couldn't even feed myself. I couldn't make myself food. And so at this point, I'm thinking I need to find the answer now because I am on my way to like death. Seriously, like I've no there's no other conclusion that I can arrive at. In February, I found something on Instagram from someone by the name of Medical Medium. His name is Anthony. Maybe Mark. I don't
Yes,
know if
I've
you're.
heard of him. I've
Yeah,
heard of
yeah.
him.
I
Yeah.
say Mark because Mark, you react to a lot of the people on Instagram. You do the reels and stuff. So I
I
didn't
have
know.
heard of him,
Maybe,
yeah. Yeah, I have heard of him.
yeah. So I at the time I followed everybody, so including him, people that disagreed with each other, people that I followed everyone, and he popped up in my feed, and it was a post about vagus nerve inflammation.
Mm.
I didn't even know what a vagus nerve was. I didn't know he had two of them. I didn't know what any of them were, but it showed a list of symptoms that could result from this, and all of the symptoms kind of fit what I was dealing with. And when you compare it with the description that showed what vagus nerves are involved in, I said, well, okay, let's check this out a little bit. And I said, what causes vagus nerve inflammation? I look it up. And I find a site, I find an article on a site called carrymedical.com, and it is all about vagopathy. And there's a whole seminar that it actually brings you to on YouTube all about this concept of vagus nerve degeneration. And in that seminar, it was done by Dr. Ross Hauser, a physiatrist, who is basically the head of Carry Medical, this company. And in that seminar, I finally realized I went, oh, I've never been so confident in my life that this is what I have. He talked about a condition called CCI, craniocervical instability, which is a condition characterized by weakened ligaments. Ligaments are just what hold bone to bone. So they're really weak ligaments. And if ligaments are weak, they don't really do their job very effectively. So the bones start moving around too much. They start, and by too much, it could be just a millimeter. It could be 2 millimeters. It doesn't matter. Depends on who you are. But it can cause the bones to impinge on surrounding nerves and arteries. It can cause blood flow problems. It can cause intracranial pressure, so you can get really bad headaches as a result of poor structural health in this respect. You can have nerve pain, like your vagus nerves, in your sort of in your neck on both sides, that go all the way down into your stomach. It's a big problem, and it affects a lot more people than people think. And so it's vastly underdiagnosed. And it can cause a slew of issues, a massive amount of issues. Now, as a result of that, I booked an appointment to get myself evaluated to see if I had the condition. And I didn't even tell my parents about it. Obviously, they were going to have to bring me, but I was so desperate that I booked it myself in my room. And then I managed to tell my dad about it that night, and he said, "Okay, let's do it." He had already gone into debt for my medical appointments. He had to refinance his mortgage to put his credit card debt into the mortgage, so because he couldn't handle it. He couldn't pay it off. And so we ended up going in April. And long story short, the Dr. Ross Hauser himself said to me that if I'd come any later, then I was on my way for something catastrophic. Um, and I knew exactly what that meant. I was 18 at the time, but I was relieved. Everyone that's sick that didn't have a diagnosis for years knows how relieving that is to be told, even if you have cancer, even if you have whatever it is, as long as you have an answer, you have something to do. You can actually try and fix the issue. So we started undergoing treatments that they administer there, regenerative treatments. These would include PRP and prolotherapy. Again, another long story short here is that I didn't have CCI only. I actually had hypermobile EDS. It affected my whole body. That's what EDS is. It's a weak ligaments. It's it's poor structural health. And so I had it all throughout my body. The reason I was experiencing so much pain with my ribs, emotional pain, it was all because of the fact that my ribs were so unstable that anytime that I felt sort of the pit in my stomach or my heart dropping or something like that, that's a physical feeling. That's your diaphragm contracting. And it was contracting so much that my ribs couldn't keep it in check. And so it was actually pulling my ribs out of place. And those were impinging on the surrounding nerves in your solar plexus, which is where you feel all of your emotion. So I couldn't actually keep my diaphragm stable. It wasn't strong enough. My muscles surrounding it had to overcompensate. and they were still too weak. It didn't help that I was basically on a vegetarian diet, and it was causing immense amounts of pain, immense amounts of pain. So that's just one of the reasons why I was experiencing so much pain and debilitation. Now, how does this tie into diet? Well, at the time, I had to stay in Florida for this because the clinic is based in Florida. And fortunately, my grandmother had a house an hour and a half away from there. And so I stayed there. But I still was focused on diet because I thought, well, still, these treatments, they are inflammatory. Things get worse before they get better. It takes a long time. The best that I can do still is to manage the symptoms of diet. I still believed in the power of diet to help with my symptoms. That's the one thing that it's one of the many things that my parents did right, though. But that's the one thing that distinguishes them from other parents, I think, is they actually did emphasize diet. They just had a wrong idea of what the right diet was. So I was still on a lectin-free plant-based diet, but at the time I started listening to more Paul Saladino. First, because I thought it was hilarious. It was like sort of watching a train wreck. But then I started listening more to what he was saying, and it started to make more sense to me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try this diet for 1 month. And I didn't think it was going to be 1 month. I said, I think this might be the right way to do things. And I don't even think it lasted a month, but it may have. That month, it was the only time that after I would actually have food, I would get blood pressure swings after I ate. I get super hot. I'd start sweating. My heart rate would go up tremendously. And I thought, this isn't right. This isn't right. Like there's got to be this doesn't seem right. But I still thought, I said, I'm advancing step by step. This still has to be this has to be right this time, right? Like it's got to be right this time. And then that led me to discovering Bart K, who had done a reaction video on Paul Saladino that popped up on my feed. And Bart knows this. I've told him before, and I've said this multiple times, that whenever I first saw his video, I couldn't stand the guy. I hated him, especially considering that Paul was like I was like, no, that's my guy now. Like that's who that Dr. Gundry used to be my guy. Now Paul's my guy. And then I kept listening though, because I never just quit and aborted the video or anything like that. I kept watching, and it was whenever he said, you are telling people to dump tremendous amounts of sugar down their throats every single day. It validated my only concern with Paul's diet the whole time was the fruit and the sugar. It's the one thing that it's one of the few things I guess we could say is that Dr. Gundry got right. So regenerative, grass-fed, grass-finished, right? Lectins are a plant toxin. Well, he also said, hey, sugar is sugar irrespective of the source. Like, stop drinking a bunch of fruit juice and eating a bunch of fruit out of season, at least, at the very least. And saying that it's okay because it's not sugar. It's just, oh, well, it's sugar from a fruit, right?
Yeah.
And so in order to transition from Dr. Gundry's diet to Paul's diet, didn't just include eating more red meat. It included eating more sugar in the form of fruit, which was the one thing that I thought to myself, I don't know about this, but I did it. I still did it. And once Bart said that, I said, right. It gave me sort of the mental, unconscious permission to go, okay, I'll cut out the carbs and see what happens. And so that's what led me to carnivore.
Wow.
That's what led me to carnivore. I started it 2 weeks after I witnessed, Bart's video and everything and all that. So that's the story of how I arrived there, actually.
Wonderful.
So what was the feedback from the doctors when you eventually came to carnivore? Like how long did it take the healing process kick in?
Yeah, so whenever I had become a carnivore, so to speak, whenever I started eating a carnivore diet, what ended up happening was I had already reached a point where I didn't really believe in that system anymore. And so I never went back. I think I went back one time, and it was to actually get my testosterone levels checked because it had been years since I had actually been on the drug, right? And so I said, well, let's go get that checked. I think this was like, I don't know, 2023 or so. And they actually insisted on me getting a lipid panel, but they didn't even ask what I was eating. I think what they said is, they were like, you eating healthy? I said, yeah. And they said, good. That's what they said. That was the conversation about diet. So I never went back. I have no idea if they would push back or not. I've had questions that I've asked myself. I've been like, maybe, you know what, should I go back just to see what they'd say?
Mm.
and maybe it'll be fun. But honestly, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with like it. It's not really fun to me. I see plenty of other stories of people doing the same thing because they feel the need to go to the doctor. I don't need to do it myself.
But the thing
Now,
is, when you go back, you're not going to get the answers that you're looking for. You know
oh,
what I
but
mean?
yeah,
They're going to feed you the same crap. It's like, okay, well, this is a one-off. You're a one-off. There's nobody else
yeah,
in the world doing this. All this nonsense. Because this is what I hear on a regular basis. I worked with a client around 6 months ago. We put her type 2 diabetes into remission. She came off all her pills. She went back to see the doctor. The doctor asked her the simple question, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm on a high-fat diet. I'm on the carnivore diet." And she turned around and he turned around and said to her, "You need to get off that diet. This diet's going to kill you."
yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. They
Absolutely
don't
crazy.
they don't understand. This also speaks to a broader point. I've talked about this before, but people think about diet as different. They think of diets as different tools in a toolbox, where each of them has different utilities depending on circumstances. Oh, I'm going to go on this diet for 30 days to lose some weight. I'm going to go on this diet to get rid of endometriosis or whatever they're talking about. They don't think of diet as here is the center point of the circle. This is where you should be. And any other diet is a deviation away from that and is directly commensurate with a risk to the organism. They don't think of diet like that. They don't think that there's a proper diet.
Yeah.
They don't recognize, they don't think of symptoms or pathologies or anything like that as the manifestation of deviations away from the proper diet. That's what happens with every other animal in the wild. They deviate too strongly, they get diseased. They become diseased and sick. They
Mhm.
become disordered. But we don't think of ourselves as animals for some reason. We forget that we are because we have self consciousness. So we just I don't know. We sort of separate ourselves from other animals. And sometimes, depending on the context, it makes sense. Other times, when it comes to our physiology, our biochemistry, what we should be eating, no. Like we are one animal.
It's
And
crazy. So every species on the planet knows what to eat apart from us.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Crazy.
Not humans,
But
not
we're all
humans.
like we're the only species on the planet that's confused about food.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, Edward, I'd like to inform our audience about the book you've written, Contraindicated.
yeah.
It's really a tremendous work, full of evidence for this way of living and eating. And please tell us a little bit about the genesis of that book and how you came to bring that forth.
Yeah, so that's basically the next step in the story. I stopped it where I arrived at Carnivore because that is where the story stops when it comes to how I arrived at Carnivore, of course. But um, the story of me arriving in the space really started at that point. In fact, actually, in reality, it started a lot later. But the seed was planted back then. Whenever I discovered Bart, it was not only someone that validated my main concern, it was someone that actually brought an entirely different perspective to the health space that I hadn't seen before. So he was bringing up hard sciences, stuff that never appealed to me in high school, never appealed to me in school generally. But he was bringing up things like chemistry and biochemistry, and he was bringing up statistics and mathematics, and especially the mathematics thing. That was very interesting to me because I was the best in any subject. My best subject was math, and I doubled up on math in my sophomore year of high school. I took a junior level class as a sophomore and got second in the class. Like on everything, I loved algebra. That was my whole thing. And so, bringing these fundamentals to the space, I was like, this is an interesting juxtaposition. I thought it was a juxtaposition at first, but in reality, that's just the essence of of finding the truth when it comes to really anything is looking at the fundamentals. So it sparked up my sort of erudite elements, I guess, the parts of me that are very like driven towards the scholarly elements of things. It sparked it back up, and it was always there, but it was lying dormant basically. So I realized very quickly that I need to binge this guy's videos. Like I need binge Bart's videos and learn more. I need to like take notes, and I had nothing else to do. I didn't have a job at that point because I had to quit. Again, I thought I was going on a 2-week leave, and then I had to quit my job. So I never got a job again, and I still, I've been inculcated with a very strong work ethic. So it was like I would, to a fault, where even when I should be taking a break, I don't. And so I was constantly trying to find an opportunity to not feel lazy, even though I'm not lazy. I'm completely debilitated. Well, this was my my shot to do that. I said, okay, this is my opportunity. Let's go ahead and spend all the time that I have just rigorously studying. And so that involved first just binging Bart's videos because you pick up on some things first. But then it involves me discovering that he has a second channel on a different platform with all of his old videos from years and years ago, which some of them are actual lessons on things. So I looked at those. Then I started branching out a little bit. I discovered Anthony Chafee. I didn't know who he was until I actually discovered Bart first. Then discovered Anthony Chafee. Then discovered this Ken Berry guy. Who's this guy? Right? And so I'm looking at all their videos. Mainly, Anthony's. He has more of the long form informational, like not lessons, but history style videos. Paul Mason was another person that I was listening to. And I was writing papers. I was writing research papers basically on these. First it was on the videos, and then I did stuff myself. But there's on vitamin C and cholesterol and saturated fat and heart disease and fiber, the classic things. And it was completely revolutionary to me. I was sending them. I couldn't get over it. I was sending them to my friends and family, and I was like, "Dude, read this. You need to read this. This is insane." And most of their reaction was sort of some subtle laughter and was like, "Huh, this is what you've been doing in your free time?" Not acknowledging what I've actually said. It was like, "This is what you're doing?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, what else am I gonna do? This is important stuff. Read it. And they're like, "Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'll get to it. What do you think happened?" Well, they're not gonna get to that. They don't care about it. They're not afflicted by any of this. They don't even realize what I'm sending them. And partly that's sort of my fault. I mean, if you're going to try and share someone with something, provide someone with a service, you think in marketing, for example, you don't just throw it in their face. You have to package it. You have to sell it. You have to actually cater to their emotions. I just sent them this and I was just like, vitamin C. Here, read this. But the other part is because they're not sick. They're not. They don't have any reason to look at this stuff, even with
Motivated. Yeah.
They're not motivated at all. And so I said, okay, fine. I'll just keep looking at this stuff myself. And again, I would wake up from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. I was watching videos. Even when I went to sleep, I had Bart's stuff on shuffle, hundreds of videos. I was just absorbing everything. And then I was taught, not really, but I was, my grandma, I was living in her house, of course, but we were sort of, it's like she had a half of the house and I had the other half of the house. It wasn't like we were, I've been living there for months now. There's only so much to talk about, especially when I don't really have a life at this point. But one day she comes out into the kitchen and she hears me listening to one of Bart's videos. She goes, "Hey, so what are you listening to?" And I said, "You probably won't want to look at any of this. You probably won't find it interesting. You probably don't want to listen." She goes, No, I'm going to sit out here and turn on the TV for a little bit. Why don't you put it on? And I went, "Oh, God. All right. Let me go ahead. I'll put it up on the TV. I'll go ahead and do that." And I was expecting her to not like the content at all. And she loved it. She thought it was funny. She thought it was pretty interesting. She exactly the opposite of what I thought. And I went, "Oh, this is great, because now I don't have to feel like I don't feel like I have to watch it on my own. Like I can watch it out here in the living room. Okay, cool." Well, it turned into a daily thing where we were just watching his videos, and she was like, "We're not told any of this stuff. We're not told any of this at all. Why am I hearing this for the first time?" And I said, "You're asking me." Like, this is what I'm saying too. This is what I've been saying too. But one day she looked at me and she said, "Eddie, you could do what Bart does. You could do what he does." And I said, "No, I can't. What are you talking about?" That's way out of, like, you're just saying that because you're family, right? There's no way that you're saying. And I called my dad that night and I said, "Yeah, get a load of what my grandma just said. She said that I could do about it." He said, "No, I've been thinking about that for a while." Because my dad was on the same page with me. Every time I made an advancement or a change, he believed me. He was listening to me. So he was on board with this already at this point. So he knew who Bart was and everything. He goes, no, I think that you definitely could. Here's what I'll do, Eddie. I'll invest $2,000 to buy all of the equipment that you need to set up the channel, but only if you actually start making the material. And I said, okay, we'll see where it goes, I guess. And he goes, treat it like a business investment. Like, just pay me back afterwards. Like, that's what, and I have since then. But I was like, okay, let's do it. And then I was talking to my now fiance, who I was friends with her. She was my coworker at the time, or well, she had been. And we had started a habit of talking every night at this point. And I said to her, no, I'm writing all this material out, and now my dad's saying that I should like make a channel. Like, I could probably write a book with all this stuff that I have. And I said it as a joke, like an expression. And in the middle of it, I went, no, I definitely could. Like, I can put all of this together into a book. Yes, I could. And so over the course of 2 weeks, so 14 days, 16 hours each day, probably, I wrote the entire book. It took a long time, but actually that's only a short amount of time because half of it was already written. I was just putting it together. And it was supposed to be a one-off thing. I said, you know what? I'm going to release it. And if people see it and they want to buy it, they can get it. That's cool. But ironically, I was mainly writing it for myself first to organize my thoughts. I was like, we need to make sure if this actually makes sense. So let's just put it together, the whole map together, so I can look back and say, it doesn't make sense or not. And of course, at the end, I believed it did make sense. But I didn't even think about sharing it and going through the whole process of getting the book published. That's a whole process. It's a whole process. And it was whenever I talked to my dad about it, again, he said, you know what, if you're going to have a channel out, it'd be nice if you had a book out. Like, that would be cool. I said, okay, all right. So he invested another like $1,000 on a company that we no longer work with. I mean, it was just a lot of work. There's a lot of investing. And I eventually I did most of the work, of course, because it's my book, getting the book published. And that was in April of 2024. I started my channel publicly on January 20th of 2024. So it was very soon after that my book was released. And I've been making material ever since and just building from there. First, it was just reaction videos only. Then I started some exclusive content on Patreon. It was really just early uploads and stuff. But now I'm one of the 2 instructors in our CCI coaching program with Carnivore Coach Peter, getting people internationally accredited and certified as carnivore coaches. I am building a biochemistry course with the help of 20 early access members in my biochemistry course on another community platform. I have I have a private health science community. I'm just now launching some introductory consultations and stuff like that, helping other people. And we've grown from, I mean, look, I started January 20th of 2024, over 2 years now. It's been over 2 years, and we're at about 13,000 subscribers now.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
marvelous. So happy to see that happening. And thank you. And it really makes us happy because you're a younger generation. I came into this when I started Carnivore at age 68. And I said, oh, this is great for old people. You know, you can rejuvenate your life. And my focus has been on that over 40 generation that's become debilitated because of the way they eat. And to see someone your age bring this up, it just gives me great hope for the future of this lifestyle. And I'm so happy to see it. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely another angle that I approach the creation of my material with is I want to reach younger people. I don't want to only reach younger people. I mean, the primary demographic of my material is not younger generations. It's not of younger generations.
Yeah.
But the younger generations, I of course I do have a significant minority of them as younger people. The calls that I have with people, even just about our CCI program, for example, people that inquire about it, the last 7 calls in a row, I think only one person was above the age of 25.
Wow.
So we're definitely reaching younger people, and it's really good. And I think that I'm also sort of getting them more on the right track, not just because we're getting them from plant-based ways of like the mainstream ideology to sort of alternative ideology. It's actually sort of the opposite. Some of these people, the younger people are already really disaffected. They're really disaffected people. They don't really believe in our institutions anymore. They're already at that point, but they almost overcorrect. They get to they chase the absurdity. And so one of the things that I've done is I let them know, hey, by the way, this might look absurd, but it's not absurd. First of all, here are the reasons. And also, even if it were, you don't chase something because it's absurd. You chase the truth. That's what you do. And so it just so happens that if you arrive at a conclusion that's ostensibly absurd by rigorous logical deduction, well, that's fine. But if you just chase the absurd because it's absurd, well, then you're no better than the mainstream chasing or the people that believe the mainstream narrative because it's mainstream, right? You correct in the opposite direction. And so I think I'm also doing that for younger people too, because there's a lot of younger people nowadays, or people even younger than me, that they again, they overcorrect. They believe anything that is contrarian. They become contrarian, which doesn't mean that you're rigorous and like healthy skepticism. It means you just believe the opposite. It's almost like a petulant way. It's like lashing out, and so that's also what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to teach people how to rigorously pursue the truth, like in a disciplined and rigorous fashion, and guided by humble curiosity. Like, don't care about what your conclusion is. That's not what you care about. Because if you care about what the conclusion is or what it makes you look like, then you're chasing aesthetics. You're chasing tribalism. There's a difference between being part of a tribe and then being tribal, like tribalistic. And trying to get people to distinguish between those two and choose the right option. That's another thing that I'm doing.
Wow.
No, I completely get it. And because your age as well, where's he gone? And because I completely get it, Eddie. And because your age as well, you can resemble to that age group. Whereas if myself and Victoria were having this chat, they wouldn't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They'd be like, okay, well, these two people are old people. Why would I listen to these people?
Whereas, like, exactly.
Like it's like, and young Jonathan as well in the community, and then we have Aaliyah as well. Aaliyah's only 16. It's just amazing seeing now we have younger people, because I've always said the biggest regret for me is I didn't know about this 20 years ago. When I went through college and I was fed all the crap bait pretty much. When I look back at what I was doing over the years and helping people, I wasn't helping them at all.
Yeah.
I could get these people in amazing shape, but I had no idea why these people were suffering. And I've said this many, many times on podcasts. I used to always say to these people, go and see your doctor, or go to dietitians, go to nutritionists, because I don't know what to do. I know how to get you in shape. You come to me, I'll get you in the best shape of your life. But when these people are coming back to me and saying I'm in severe pain, I'm a type 2 diabetic, I've developed fatty liver disease, I haven't got a clue. Not a clue.
Yeah.
And I did 2 years in college. 2 years in college, and I learned absolutely nothing. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Or it's I mean, you can almost say that you got off easy if you only learned nothing instead of learning horrible information and believing because sometimes you come out worse than you were when you started. Like it's bad. It's bad.
I'll give you another one, Eddie. I only spoke to this guy. This guy reached out to me last week. He was on TikTok. He has over 500,000 followers on his page. And he reached out to me. He says, I like your content. I'd like to work with you. And I said, okay, we'll jump on a call. So we jumped on a call. He tried to sell me these fiber supplements. This is what he sells. And he was telling me that he was a type 2 diabetic. He put his type 2 diabetes into remission. And I was asking him, okay, do you mind me asking you how you did it? And he says, I have these amazing supplements. There are these fiber supplements. And I said, are you still consuming carbohydrates at the moment? He says, yeah, but I don't consume the starchy ones, the processed ones. They're the main ones that do the damage. And I was like, oh my God. Over 500,000 people are listening to this guy. Listening to this rubbish. And every time I kept on saying to him, listen, do you not understand carbohydrates, like what you mentioned at the beginning, sugar is sugar. It impacts the body the same way. He just couldn't get his head around it. Just could not get his head around it. And this was a dietitian. I was like, how are these people convincing the world that this is how you do it? It's just madness.
Well, they're tied to the mainstream. They're feeding into the mainstream nonsense that we've all come to accept. But that's the challenge. How do we get the word out? What do we do?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, no one. I don't really know why he said that he cured his diabetes with fiber supplements. I highly doubt that you cure your diabetes with
No,
fiber supplements.
but I pushed them. Believe me, I pushed them. He did. I'm pretty sure he managed the symptom, but he didn't cure it. I'm 100% sure.
Yeah, because and the other point is that the only distinction between like the sugar molecules are the same between the like this is what it's even more astonishing. You know, you look at it on the surface and you go, well, these things break down to sugar. These plants break down to sugar. And also this Twinkie breaks down to the same sugar. So why are people saying it's different? That's already astonishing that people are trying to draw a difference there. But then you think about it even deeper and you go, the sugar in the Twinkie came from those plants. Like it's even more obvious because where did that sugar come from when they made it? It came from plants. So it's even more obvious. Like it's not just like processed sugar. We got it from this different source. So sugar comes from a different source. It's like, no, it doesn't. It all traces right back to the plant, the thing on the right that you're trying to compare the Twinkie to. It's like, no, it still does come from that. Like it comes from the plant. So the only major difference of any practical concern is the rate at which it hits your bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it. But it doesn't mean that if it hits it slower that you've reduced all harm. You've reduced some of it. But why don't you just cut it out completely?
Exactly.
Usually
makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is what frustrates me, probably yourself as well. Is, I mean, like we hear all this. Well, I mean, your story is remarkable, and when you're saying that you weren't eating enough protein, this is what really frustrates me in the world at the moment. When we're hearing this trend that we're all fiber deficient, and we shouldn't be eating that much protein. That's what drives me crazy. Like what?
Oh,
What's going
Yeah,
on?
ridiculous.
Like we have like nearly 50% of the world that are talking about this at the moment. And I just can't believe this. I can't believe this is the direction we're going in.
Well, Dr. Gundry believes that we are over proteinized as a society. He thinks we're actually eating too much protein. I mean, this is the listen. This is the
brain even work anymore.
Yeah, I know. Well, he thinks that again. It's like I should play a game in my videos where I go bad Gundry, good Gundry, because seriously, he says sometimes he's the most like. He says the most sensible thing in the plant-based space where like sugar is sugar, and I go, oh wow, that's great, Dr. Country. And then on the other hand, he goes, you should be eating no more than 20 to 30 grams of protein per day. I'm not kidding. And I go,
no.
Oh my God. That's like criminal advice.
Yes.
That's criminal advice.
Well, that sounds like the World Health Organization promoting that kind of thing. Did you hear about that? You know that they want to lower the protein required to live around the world.
Oh no, I didn't hear that.
That level, yeah.
20 to 30 grams?
Yeah, Dr. Ide, Georgia Ide did a whole review of the World Health Organization's pamphlet a couple of years ago, and that was the message: lower the protein.
That came up my feed there about 3 weeks ago. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh wow!
I can send you the link, Ed. It's just outstanding at what she did. She followed every footnote and she exposed them for they're really vegan supported, and that's what their agenda is: veganism. So they're pushing away animal protein completely.
So it's a double whammy. You're getting 20 to 30 grams of protein per day, which is extremely low for in absolute terms. Plus, it's in the form of plant protein, so you're not even getting 30 grams.
So it's not bioavailable.
Yeah.
To a great extent.
It's crazy. It's crazy that this is the direction. Hopefully, we're not going in, because if we go in this direction.
Yeah, no. There's a kid next door. So we recently moved to a house around here. And it's a much better neighborhood. You got kids like from all around the area playing basketball or whatever. We see one of these kids. He's got his shirt off a lot, and he has. Are you aware of a kwashiorkor, that condition?
Yes. The Biafrans. Yes.
Yeah. So he's not to that level because he's not actually starving. Like he's not eating anything, but you can actually tell he's protein deficient because he's got these really, really skinny arms and legs, but he's got the gut. He's got the distended gut, and he actually looks like, it's sad because he's not like he's a toddler. I mean, we're talking like He's
Yeah.
like 8 or 9 or something. Like he's old enough to not look like that. He's not 2 years old where they just have that stomach for a minute and then before they're structurally
Yes,
developed.
yeah, exactly.
Um, it's sad because I was just talking to my fiance about this when we were both looking at him and I said he's protein deficient. Like you can tell in his body he's protein deficient.
Absolutely.
It's the same with
That's
the
a
marathon
shame.
runners, though, Eddie. Look at the marathon runners. I mean, I
Yeah,
know 2 marathon runners, and I've seen their diet. It's very, very high in carbohydrate, and their protein is like, let's say this guy was 160 pounds. I can guarantee his protein intake is below 100. He's
Yeah.
probably taking around 80, maybe 70 or 80 grams of protein for his body weight,
Yeah.
and the majority is coming from like vegetables and carbohydrates.
I see that in power lifters too. They all have a big gut, but
Yeah, yeah.
and they do the lifting, but I don't think they're getting sufficient protein to support their
No,
musculature.
because they're rich. A power lifter would be. I know this because this is what I used to do. I used to be a rugby player, and the one thing they do is they give you a lot of carbohydrates. So the majority of your diet is high in carbohydrates.
Yep.
So
Crap.
around 70% of your overall intake comes from carbs, and around 25% comes from protein. So you're not actually consuming that much protein at all.
no, no, and
If you are, I'm sorry, if you are getting your protein, it's not bioavailable. You're getting it from whey protein, whey
yeah,
protein bars. So you're not getting it from good sources. You'll have about 2 or 3 meals, but they'll say to you, in order to get your protein up, just have a protein bar with your meal, or have a protein shake
yeah,
with your meal. And
yep,
then, and it's rich in carbohydrate, like pastas, rice, sweet potatoes, all that kind of stuff. And then when we used to have a refeed at the weekend. We were told, okay, cut down on the protein and literally have as many carbohydrates as you like. And we're talking about like shit carbohydrates, like donuts, like like bread, like curries, you name it. Like we could have whatever we wanted. This is how these people just grew and they just got so big and they put on this diet. Because I remember when I was like, I think it was around 22, 24, I was carrying a lot of body weight, but I was convinced at one stage, okay, this is all muscle. I'm
yep,
huge now.
No, it's
When I'm in the gym,
intramuscular fat is
yeah,
what it
I'm
is.
lifting all
It's
this weight
fat.
in the gym. I'm powerful. I'm strong. When I go out onto the pitch, I'm ready to attack. But Jesus, I couldn't last 10 minutes. Couldn't last 10 minutes on the pitch.
Isn't
yep,
isn't that ironic that here you are training and training and training and knocking yourself out to fight on the pitch and you can't. You just
No,
can't perform.
you can't perform. And I only spoke to Barclay about this the other day because I had Barclay on the podcast the other day, and he was right in what he said that when you're a rugby player, your only performance comes from like about 5 minutes. You don't use up too much energy at all. So when he said that, it just made so much sense because when I was in the scrum, that was the only time I used up energy. That was the only
yeah,
time I wouldn't be able to run for like 80 minutes on a pitch. 80
yeah,
minutes, I would have probably had a heart attack.
yeah.
So I was trained for that area, like to get
Hmm.
as big as possible, get into scrum and be powerful. That's what I was trained and become. And Bart says this all the time: is training should be specific to your goals
Yep.
and what you want to achieve, and you
Yeah,
should
we're
100% train for
specialists.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what he. Yeah, exactly, exactly. You know, it's funny that you mentioned, yeah, in the powerlifting space and in that general fitness space, that sort of niche, it is very carb heavy and it's also steroid heavy.
yeah.
The thing is when you actually look at, I was talking to Dr. John Jaquish a few months ago at this point,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
We
watched that
know
one.
who
Yeah,
he is.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it was last year. So you might remember. I asked him. I said, okay, so how many of these athletes that you deal with, you work with athletes in the NBA and the NFL. Everyone always says that these top performing athletes are having carbs. You won't find one top performing athlete that isn't having carbs.
Mm.
So how many of them like carb load and put lots of emphasis on carbs in their diet? And he said, yeah, you'd be surprised at how many people actually don't do that at all in these spaces.
Really.
Said, yeah, he said they don't. The reason why you don't know that though is because they don't talk about that. But in order to have that much stamina and persistence, when you're dealing with sports, their carb emphasis. It's not like he didn't say that they're all carnivores. I'm sure they're having carbohydrates, but they're not
Yeah.
like carb loading before workouts or or a game or something like that. They're not doing that. Some, one here and there might be doing that, but the people that he works with, they don't do that. And in the coaches that he works with that work with all of those athletes, most of they don't put emphasis on that either. He said that the one group that you will always find that is putting lots of emphasis on the carbs are the ones that are the loudest. They just happen to be the loudest, and they're the ones online that are like Lane Norton, and they're all the people that are in the bodybuilding space. They're putting lots of emphasis on carbs and plant-based diets. They don't even realize. So they talk about the emphasis of protein, which is great. They'll tell you to have all this lean protein, but their diets are actually mainly plant-based. They don't even realize it because they don't consider it that way because they don't consider themselves vegetarian or vegan. But that doesn't mean that your diet isn't plant-based, because in many cases it is. Plus steroids, like they do. A lot of them don't talk about it. A lot of them do talk about it. They don't care. Steroids, yeah, I'm not natty, whatever. But that just goes to show they think that the top athletes, when they think top athletes, they think marathon runners and power lifters. It's like, well, hold on a minute. Those are two things. Those are two activities. Look at any of the really high performing athletes like in the NFL and the NBA. Look at what they're eating. I'm not saying they're carnivore, but I'm also saying that they're not dumping 500 grams of carbs down their throat, or up to, I don't know, depending on the power lifter you listen to, 1,000 grams.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Oh,
a
is that
ton.
possible?
And that's daily.
Yeah,
You're
daily.
having it on a daily basis. I mean,
horrible.
you look at what's his name? The strongest man in the world. What was his name? He was from England. Eddie
Hall.
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
his diet
Yes.
was incredible. His diet was like he was eating this on a daily basis. I was like, wow, this guy is on the verge, literally on the verge. And look at him now; he's half the man he used to be. Half the man. He knew fully well he couldn't sustain this for the rest of his life.
No. Yeah, that's
And now he's speaking very highly about the carnivore diet at the moment.
Yes, he did
He's
try
actually
it. I
tried
know.
it a few
A
times.
couple years back. Yeah.
Yeah, and he said many times that if he could do it all over again, he would have went down the carnivore approach.
Good. Glad to hear that. Well, Ed, it's been wonderful hearing your story and understanding what you've been doing on every platform to get the evidence out there. If you had a message to give to the carnivore curious, what would that be?
Yeah, so what I would tell them is never fall for, well, there's like three different things that are coming to my mind. I just recently did an interview with Courtney Luna, and I talked to her about the I said, what is your biggest insecurity on carnivore? Because she's made videos being very transparent, saying, sometimes I'm confused. I forget, I don't know why I don't know whether I should be introducing carbs or not, or introducing this and that. And I said, well, right now, what is your biggest insecurity? Is it that? And we talked about it. And I talked about the reason why I think people have insecurities. Why do some people have such ease pivoting whenever someone comes out and says something?
Yeah.
And it's because people forget why they arrived at carnivore to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
They take for granted all of the reasons why they've arrived at carnivore. They forget because now it's normal now.
Yes.
It's normal. It's part of you hear all the arguments all the time. And so it's much easier, it's like a shiny object syndrome. You hear something new and you go, you know what? Maybe I should be doing that. Maybe I could be even better than I am now, especially the vulnerable people that maybe are having some problems on carnivore. They need to optimize it a bit more, that are especially susceptible. And so what I would tell people is do not take for granted carnivore. Do not take carnivore for granted. Don't take the reasons why, like don't forget why you've arrived at this position that you're in. Don't do that, because that is how carnivore fails. That is how it fails. I just did a video about this a few days ago. It's a live stream. It says how carnivore will win.
Mm-hmm.
It will win when people remember the reasons why carnivore is the way to go, and they push through the problems that they're having in any way that they possibly can.
Yeah.
Not by introducing carbs back in and saying, well, carnivore didn't work for me. I'm telling you right now, that is how carnivore loses. When all the people online say, well, this is why I introduced carbs back in. You know what? It just wasn't sustainable. Carnivore wasn't sustainable. If more and more people start doing that, it's not like it's always their fault. Some people are confused. They hear conflicting information all the time, and they're having problems. But if we, as people that do know that that's not the right way to go, let that be. If we just say, okay, maybe it just didn't work for them. Yeah, that's not that is how we lose. If we want to become mainstream, we got to make sure that we don't forget. We don't
Exactly.
forget the reason why we're.
100%.
Yeah,
Well
that's what I.
said. Yeah. Yeah. Well
Yes,
said.
excellent. Great advice. Is there some, can you tell us the ways to get in touch with you? I know there's so many ways, but if you would mention a few of them, we'd appreciate that for our audience.
Yeah. So I'm mainly present on YouTube primarily. So if you go to the description of any of my videos, you'll find my newsletter, which is where you can find access to my email. I also am able to be reached on Instagram at e.goki_. I also have my email my email is, again, you can access it in the newsletter. I also have a personal email that's edgoki@pm.me, Proton Mail. So I have that as my email. And then, I mean, other than that, if anyone is wondering where to acquire the book, you can also find it on YouTube as well. It's in my channel description for the book, and also my private health science community. And if you have any other questions about, for example, my biochemistry course or the CCI program that I am an instructor of, or anything else that I talk about in my videos, then I would suggest signing up for that newsletter to learn anything more about it. Just ask, respond to the email and say, what are you interested? Tell me what you're interested in, and we'll go from there. So, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. Thank you so much for being with us today. We really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks
Appreciate
for having me
it.
on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Eddie. Thanks for coming
Yeah.
on.
All
Absolutely.
right then. Thank you guys. Bye now.